Fireworks and Mistletoe by Win Valentine. Chapter 1. Arrival in Paradise, Lost. Tess Brennan sat in her rental SUV and glared at the project management tablet mounted on her dashboard. The screen was glowing with her latest masterpiece, the Lockhart Valley Festival audit, and currently it was color-coded almost entirely in a shade Tess mentally referred to as catastrophe red. "It can't be this bad," she muttered, tapping a cell labeled Vendor Contracts. The cell expanded to reveal a single note. Huck thinks a handshake counts as a binding legal agreement. Also, barter system in effect? Tess closed her eyes. Okay. Deep breath. You are a consultant. You are not the captain of this ship. You are merely the person explaining why the iceberg is a statistical probability. She opened her eyes. Outside the windows, Lockhart Valley unfolded like a holiday movie set that was trying just a little too hard. The mountains were aggressively majestic, draped in pristine snow. The main street was strung with so many twinkling lights it was a miracle the local power grid hadn't surrendered in protest. It was charming. It was picturesque. It was a logistical nightmare masking as a winter wonderland. Tess adjusted her glasses, grabbed her tablet, her shield, her sword, her external brain, and stepped out into the crisp, pine-scented air. She marched toward the town hall, a Victorian brick building that looked like it had been preserved in amber, and probably had similar insulation standards. She pushed through the heavy oak doors, expecting the hum of a busy event headquarters. She found silence. Well, silence interrupted by the rhythmic thunk hiss of an ancient radiator and the sound of someone aggressively stapling something. "Hello?" Tess called out. The stapling stopped. Behind a desk overflowing with paper stacks that defied physics, a man with a silver beard and kind, tired eyes looked up. "If you're here about the noise complaint," he said, "I already told Mrs. Gable that the reindeer practice is essential." "I'm Tess Brennan," she said, "Diana and Felix's daughter." The man's face broke into a relief so profound it was almost painful to watch. He hurried around the desk, wiping his hand on his suspenders before offering it. "Jerome Hucklebridge? Huck. Your parents talk about you like you invented the concept of organization." "They exaggerate," Tess said, shaking his hand. "Usually, they said you needed some logistical consulting?" "Consulting," Huck chuckled. It was a dry sound, like dead leaves. "Is that what they called it?" "Tess, honey, we don't need consulting. We need a miracle. Or a time machine." Tess unlocked her tablet. "I prefer data to miracles. I've reviewed the shared drive. Please tell me the budget folder isn't empty because of a syncing error." Huck looked at the radiator. "We operate on a philosophy of abundance. We trust the funds will appear." "Abundance is not a line item," Tess said, fighting the urge to hyperventilate. She pulled up the calendar. "Huck, the festival is in 10 days. The broadcast team arrives in 2. Violet Krishnan is expecting a world-class event, not a philosophy of abundance." "I know," Huck sighed, sounding suddenly 20 years older. "The mill closed a decade ago, Tess. This broadcast, the sponsorship money, the tourism. It's the only thing keeping the town accounts from freezing over. If this fails, we don't just lose a party. We lose the town." The stakes hit Tess harder than the cold outside. Bankruptcy. Her parents had mentioned tight times, but this was survival. "Okay," Tess said, exhaling, her breath pluming in the cold air, shrinking the tension in her chest by a fraction. She tapped her screen, opening a new project file. Code red, strategy meeting. Who is handling the visual design? The permit said something about a local artist coordinator. "Rin," Huck said. A complicated expression crossed his face. fondness mixed with the look one gives a bomb that might be made of glitter. He's at the festival grounds, painting. Painting sets? Painting. The vibes. Huck said apologetically. Tess stared at him. The vibes. He says the stage needs to feel right before we worry about physics. Tess capped her stylus with a sharp click. I'm going down there. If I'm not back in an hour, send a search party, or a structural engineer. The festival grounds were a sprawling, snow-covered field dominated by a wooden stage that looked suspiciously like it had been built without a level. In front of it, a man was standing on a ladder, shouting at the wind. Tess marched across the snow, her boots crunching with military precision. The man, Rin presumably, was a storm in a flannel shirt. He had a mop of dark, curly hair that defied gravity, and he was currently wrestling a massive canvas sheet that was flapping violently in the breeze. "Stay!" he yelled at the fabric. "Cooperate! You are art! Act like it!" "Fabric doesn't have agency," Tess announced, stopping at the base of the ladder. Rin looked down. He was younger than she expected, with eyes the color of warm espresso and a smear of bright blue paint across his cheekbone. He looked at Tess's practical parka and waterproof boots, like she was a time traveler from a boring future. "You must be the engineer," he said. He made the word sound like auditor or dentist. "I'm Tess," she said, "and you're losing a fight with a tarp." "It's not a tarp," Rin said, sliding down the ladder with a fluid, chaotic grace. "It's the backdrop. I'm painting the spirit of the valley." "It looks like a purple bruise," Tess noted. "It represents dusk." Rin gestured wildly with a paintbrush, narrowly missing Tess's nose. "The liminal space. The vibes, Tess. You have to capture the vibes before you can build the container." "You can't build a container if the foundation is rotting," Tess countered, pointing her tablet at the stage. "I did a visual assessment from the parking lot. That stage lists to the left. If you put a choir on that, they're going to slide into the percussion section." Rin crossed his arms. Paint flakes drifted from his jacket. "It adds dynamic tension. Symmetry is the enemy of art." "Gravity is the enemy of not dying," Tess snapped. "Rin, look at me." He did. And for a second, the manic energy dropped. He looked tired. He looked terrified. "We have 10 days, Tess said, her voice dropping. 10 days to turn this abstract concept into a national broadcast. If we fail, the town goes under. Huck told me." Rin flinched. "I won't let it fail. This is my home." "Then let me build the container," Tess said. "You paint the vibes. I'll make sure the stage doesn't kill anyone. Deal?" Rin looked at her outstretched hand, then at her tablet, then back at her eyes. He sighed, a puff of white in the cold air. "Fine," he said, taking her hand. His grip was warm and rough with paint. "But if you try to make me wear a clipboard, I quit." "Deal," Tess said. She pulled her hand back, feeling a strange jolt of static electricity. She looked down at her tablet and opened a new file. Project Phoenix. "Phase 1, she muttered. "Organize the chaos." Rin just grinned, dipped his brush in a bucket of electric blue, and turned back to his canvas. "Good luck, engineer," he called over his shoulder. "Welcome to the chaos." Chapter 2. The Artist's Perspective. Rin Moretti didn't trust people who wore symmetrical clothing. It was a rule he lived by, right up there with never eat sushi from a gas station, and always assume the glitter will explode. And the woman currently standing in the center of the town square, Tess Brennan, the engineer, the woman who came to audit Joy, was violently symmetrical. Her coat had buttons that actually lined up. Her scarf was folded, not draped. She stood with her weight evenly distributed on both feet, as if she were personally holding down the tectonic plate. She looks like a human spreadsheet, Rin muttered to his easel. The easel, being an inanimate object currently covered in a drying layer of midnight epiphany blue acrylic, did not respond. But Rin felt its agreement. From his vantage point on the gazebo steps, Rin had a perfect view of the invasion. Tess was pointing at the vintage lampposts, Rin's favorite lampposts, which he had personally decorated with ribbons recovered from the 1998 Winter Carnival, and shaking her head. Beside her, Huck looked like a golden retriever being lectured on the physics of fetch. "Don't let her bully you, Huck," Rin whispered, squinting against the glare of the snow. "Defend the ribbons. The ribbons are essential." Tess turned, and for a second, Rin thought he'd been spotted. But Tess was just pivoting to inspect the gazebo. Rin ducked behind his canvas, clutching his paintbrush like a shiv. He shouldn't be hiding. He was 29 years old, a professional artist, mostly, and the creative director of this festival. He should march down there and explain that unparalleled genius rarely adhered to fire codes or budget caps. But there was something about Tess that made Rin's stomach do a weird little flip-flop. Maybe it was the intense green eyes behind those sensible glasses. Or maybe, and this was more likely, it was the terrifying aura of competence radiating off her in waves. Rin looked down at his own attire, paint-splattered jeans that had once been black, a flannel shirt that was 30% cotton and 70% hope, and boots that were held together by duct tape and prayer. "We are not the same species," Rin told his thumb, which was currently stained a vibrant purple. "She is Homo Offician, and I am Homo Chaos." A gust of wind caught the corner of his canvas, threatening to turn his masterpiece, Spirit of the Valley, currently looking more like Smudge of the Blob, into a kite. Rin lunged, catching it just before it could launch an aerial assault on the town square. "Careful!" Rin froze. The voice was crisp, clear, and uncomfortably close. He peeked around the canvas. Tess was standing at the bottom of the gazebo steps looking up. Up close, she was even more intimidating. Her skin was that perfect porcelain that Rin could never quite mix on a palette, and her expression was one of mild concern, like she was watching a toddler juggle knives. "I have it under control," Rin said, straightening up and trying to look dignified while holding a 5-foot canvas against a gale-force wind. "This is part of the process. The wind adds texture." Tess blinked. "The wind is adding velocity. That canvas is basically a sail. If you don't secure the bottom corners, you're going to parasail into the pharmacy." Rin opened his mouth to argue, but a fresh gust slammed into the canvas, nearly lifting him off his feet. He skidded 2 inches to the left. "Here," Tess said. She marched up the steps, not skipping a beat, and grabbed the other side of the frame. Her grip was firm, her leather gloves pristine. On 3, we pivoted against the wind. 1, 2, 3. They turned the canvas together, cutting the resistance. The sudden stillness was jarring. They were close now. Very close. Rin could smell Tess. Not vanilla or turpentine, but something clean and sharp, like fresh paper and expensive soap. It was maddeningly pleasant. "So," Tess said, not letting go of the frame, "you're the artist." Rin corrected. "And you're the fun police." Values of amusement flickered in Tess's eyes. "I prefer logistics consultant. Fun police implies I have a badge." "You have a clipboard," Rin pointed out. "That's worse. A badge has limits. A clipboard is infinite." Tess looked at the canvas between them. "Is this the mountain range?" "It's the soul of the mountain range," Rin said defensively. "I'm working on the emotional underpainting." "It looks like a bruised plum," Tess said. "It represents dusk," Rin yelped. "The liminal space between light and dark. The uncertainty of the future." "It's very Purple, Tess said. She let go of the frame when she was sure Rin wouldn't take flight. Huck tells me you still haven't ordered the luminarias for the path. Rin waved a hand, dismissing the boring reality of supply chains. I'm sourcing them. I want ones that glow with a warm amber light, not that cold LED blue. I want it to look like fireflies caught in jars. The festival is in 9 days, Rin. Unless you plan to personally catch 10,000 fireflies, we need to order the LEDs. Today. With expedited shipping that will cost us 3 times the budget. Rin felt the familiar prickle of panic. The real-world intrusion alarm. We can't use the blue ones. It'll look like a crime scene. It has to be warm. Then we order the warm white LEDs from the supplier in Denver. I checked their inventory 10 minutes ago. They have 4,000 units. It's not enough for the whole path, but if we space them out and use reflectors... Tess trailed off, her eyes losing focus as she calculated. Yes, we can make it work. But you have to sign the purchase order. Rin stared at her. You checked the inventory? In Denver? I check the inventory everywhere west of the Mississippi, Tess said, as if this were a normal way to spend a Tuesday morning. I also found a potential discount on biodegradable confetti, but we can discuss that later. Sign the PO. Rin. She held out the tablet. It was glowing, demanding, inevitable. Rin hesitated. Signing things made them real. Signing meant committing. Whatever money was left in the account, money that was technically supposed to pay for his time eventually, would be gone. If this festival doesn't work, Rin started, his voice smaller than he intended. Tess's gaze softened. For a moment, the consultant vanished, and there was just a tired woman standing in the cold. If it doesn't work, Tess said quietly, it won't be because we didn't have lights. Rin looked at her, really looked at her. Beneath the symmetry and the charcoal wool, Tess looked terrified. Just for a second. Then the mask of competence clicked back into place. Rin took the stylus. He signed with a flourish that was completely illegible. There, Rin said, handing it back. Let there be light. But if they're blue, I'm blaming you in the press release. Deal, Tess said. She tucked the tablet away. Now please secure your canvas before you decapitate a tourist. I have to go measure the stage load capacity. Measuring is boring, Rin called after her. Survival is boring, Tess called back without turning around. That's why it works. Rin watched her walk away, planting her feet perfectly in the center of the cleared path. Homo officium, indeed. That night, Rin's cabin felt smaller than usual. It was a charming place, if you liked rustic chic bordering on structural hazard. The walls were lined with half-finished paintings, shelves overflowing with jars of brushes, dried flowers, and peculiar rocks he'd found and felt an emotional connection with. In the corner, the wood stove crackled, fighting a losing battle against the draft coming from the window. Rin sat on his bed, the only piece of furniture that wasn't covered in art supplies, drawing his knees to his chest. He was wrapped in his grandmother's quilt, the familiar wedding ring pattern smelling faintly of lavender and memory. She hates the purple, Rin told the empty room. The room didn't answer, but the wind howled outside, rattling the window pane in its frame. Rin looked at the sketch pad on his lap. He'd been trying to draw the festival layout, but somehow he kept drawing Tess. Not the stiff, buttoned-up Tess from the square, but the way she'd looked when she grabbed the canvas. Strong, focused, anchored. It's just dynamic tension, Rin muttered, scribbling over the sketch. Visual contrast. That's all. He picked up the envelope sitting on his nightstand. The bank logo in the corner seemed to glow in the dim light, radiating bad vibes. Final notice. He hadn't told Huck. He hadn't told anyone. If the festival didn't turn a profit, a significant, miraculous profit, the cabin was gone. The land, The studio. The only place on Earth that felt like his. Gone. Collateral damage for a dream that was rapidly running out of glitter. Rin traced the pattern on the quilt. His grandmother had stitched this by hand, taking 3 years to finish it. One stitch at a time, Rinny, she used to say. You can't rush the pattern. You just have to trust that it connects. I don't see the pattern, Gran, Rin whispered. I just see a mess. He looked at the window. The snow was starting to fall harder now, thick, heavy flakes that swirled in the darkness, validating the weather report Tess had probably memorized. Tess. The woman thought she could fix everything with a spreadsheet. It was annoying. It was arrogant. And God help him, it was the most reassuring thing Rin had seen in months. Rin threw off the quilt and marched to the kitchen, a generous term for the corner with the sink and the hot plate. He grabbed his phone. 2. Huck signed the PO for lights. The engineer is scary efficient. I think she might be a robot sent from the future to eliminate joy. But maybe we needed a robot? He hit send before he could overthink it. Outside, the wind picked up, a low moan that sounded like the mountain clearing its throat. Rin shivered. He grabbed a tube of cadmium yellow and squeezed a blob onto his palette. Fine, he said to the blank canvas waiting on his indoor easel. She wants structure? I'll give her structure. He painted a single, perfect, straight line. Then he frowned, tilted his head, and immediately turned it into a lightning bolt striking a tree. Better, Rin decided. Much better. Chapter 3. Systems and Chaos. Tess loved the smell of systems in the morning. It smelled like fresh printer toner, laminated paper, and the sharp metallic tang of a spreadsheet that actually balanced. In the warm, coffee-scented air of the Mountain View Cafe, Tess was currently experiencing a near-religious moment with her festival master schedule. It's beautiful, she whispered, scrolling through the color-coded columns on her tablet. Conditional formatting, nested dependencies, a critical path so clear it could guide a lost ship home. You're talking to the iPad again, sugar, Margot said, refilling Tess's coffee mug without asking. Margot was a woman who seemed built entirely of soft curves and steel wool. She ran the cafe with the efficiency of a drill sergeant and the patience of a saint. I'm not talking to it, Tess corrected, adjusting her glasses. I'm praising it. Positive reinforcement encourages optimal performance. Electronics have feelings, Margot. Uh-huh. Tell that to the toaster. It's been burning my bagels out of spite since '09. Margot wiped down the counter, her eyes crinkling. So, do we have a festival yet? Or just a very pretty chart? We have a framework, Tess said, bringing up the volunteer roster. I've triaged the tasks. If Huck can get the lumber by Thursday, and if the high school choir doesn't all get the flu simultaneously, and if the weather holds, we might actually pull this off. I have a contingency plan for the flu, but the lumber is a hard dependency. And the artist? Margot asked, nodding toward the door. Is he in a column? Tess sighed. Rin isn't a column. Rin is a rogue variable. He's a glitch in the code. I have him slotted for a creative sync at 9. It is currently 9:14. He runs on mountain time, Margot said, or Rin time, which is usually based on how long it takes for paint to dry. As if summoned by the mention of his drying times, the cafe door banged open. A gust of wind and snowflakes swirled in, followed closely by Rin. He looked like he'd lost a fight with a rainbow. There was blue paint on his cheek, yellow on his jacket, and what looked suspiciously like glitter in his dark, messy hair. He carried a rolled-up tube of paper under one arm and a travel mug that had seen better decades in the other. I have a vision, Rin announced to the room at large. The 3 other patrons, 2 elderly men playing chess and a woman knitting a scarf long enough to strangle a giraffe, didn't even look up. They were used to Rin. Tess, however, felt her blood pressure tick up 3 points. You're late, she said, tapping the screen. 14 minutes. That's 14 minutes. We're not optimizing the power grid load. Power grids represent the tyranny of the electron, Rin said, dropping into the booth opposite her. He placed the paper tube on the table, perilously close to Tess's coffee. Also, I had to stop and look at a frozen puddle. It had these amazing fractal patterns. Nature is the ultimate artist, Tess. Nature doesn't have deadlines, Tess countered. Nature has epochs. We have 8 days. What is that? She pointed at the tube. The new stage design, Rin said, beaming. He unrolled the paper. It curled up immediately, fighting him. He grabbed the salt shaker and Tess's stapler to weigh down the corners. The old one was too rigid, too square. It screamed corporate retreat. This? This screams magic. Tess looked at the sketch. It was chaotic. It was scribbly. And it was completely curved? Rin, Tess said slowly. This stage is a spiral. Yes, like a nautilus shell, or a galaxy. Rin's hands were moving in the air, painting the concept. The performers start in the center and spiral out into the crowd. It breaks the barrier between audience and art. It's inclusive. It's organic. It's a safety hazard, Tess said, her brain already calculating the structural loads. You can't build a load-bearing spiral stage in 8 days with volunteer labor and recycled timber. Also, where do the cables go? You can't run high-voltage audio cables in a spiral without creating a tripwire trap for the tuba player. Details, Rin dismissed. The feeling is what matters. Imagine the lights tracking the spiral. It would look like the music is unspooling. I am imagining the lawsuit when the mayor trips and breaks his hip, Tess said. She pulled up the site map on her tablet. Look, we have a 20 by 30 footprint. Rectangle. Standard trussing. Safe. Efficient. Doable. Boring, Rin groaned, slumping back. It's a box, Tess. You want to put music in a box. I want the music to happen on a surface that won't collapse. Tess's voice rose slightly. I am trying to save your festival, Rin. Chaos is not a strategy. And structure isn't a soul, Rin shot back. You're sucking all the joy out of this. You're turning a celebration into a logistics exercise. Excuse me, a voice chirped from the next table. Tess and Rin froze. They turned to see Rory, the town's resident Gen Z social media manager and unofficial gossip columnist, holding up a vintage film camera. Could you guys do that again? The chaos versus structure, sexual tension? Rory asked, peering through the viewfinder. The lighting is really good right now, and I think this could be great for the behind-the-scenes story arc. Maybe point at the tablet more aggressively, Tess? There is no sexual tension, Tess and Rin shouted in unison. They looked at each other, then quickly looked away. Tess felt a flush creep up her neck that had nothing to do with the cafe's heating. Right, Rory said, documenting the moment with a loud click of the shutter. Whatever you say, boss, just keep being wildly incompatible. It tests well with the 18 to 35 demographic. Tess cleared her throat and turned back to the spiral sketch. She took a breath. Control. She needed control. She looked at the drawing again. Really looked at it. Technically, it was a nightmare. But she imagined the crowd flowing around the curves. She imagined the band in the center, sound radiating outward instead of blasting from a single direction. It solved the acoustic dead zones at the edges of the square. It created intimacy in a large space. And it was beautiful. If we don't do a full spiral, Tess said, her voice quieter, but a series of tiered semicircles. Rin stopped sulking. He sat up. Tiered? Like an amphitheater, but inverted. Tess grabbed a napkin and a pen. She sketched quickly, Straight lines, hard angles, but forming the shape Rin wanted. We use standard 4x8 platforms, which we have, but we stagger them. It creates the illusion of a curve without requiring us to bend wood. Rin watched the pen move. His eyes widened. And the cables? Run underneath the tiers, Tess said, drawing a dashed line. Central hub for power here. We wrap the risers in that blue fabric you found. It hides the hard edges. From the audience perspective, it flows. She finished the sketch and looked up. Rin was staring at her. Not at the paper. At her. That, Rin murmured. That actually works. Of course it works, Tess said, capping the pen with a satisfying click. It's geometrically sound. No, I mean, Rin gestured to the napkin. You took my messy, impossible idea and made it real. You translated me. I optimized you, Tess corrected, though she felt a strange flutter in her chest. Don't get used to it. The volunteer roster is still a spreadsheet and I'm not turning it into a haiku. Rin grinned, and it was a dangerous, blinding thing. It crinkled the corners of his eyes and made him look less like a chaotic mess and more like trouble. Very appealing trouble. Tiered semicircles, Rin said, grabbing the napkin like it was a treasure map. I can work with that. I can paint the risers to look like river stones. Non-slip paint only, Tess warned. Obviously, I'm not trying to kill the tuba player. Rin stood up, energy vibrating off him again. I need to call Huck. We need more 4x8s. Tess, you're a genius. A terrifying, buttoned-up genius. He grabbed his travel mug and bolted for the door, presumably to inflict his new enthusiasm on the unsuspecting carpenter. Bye, Rory, he shouted on his way out. Bye, Rin, Rory called back, winding the film. They turned to Tess. So, optimized him? That's practically a proposal in engineer speak. Eat your muffin, Rory, Tess muttered, pulling her tablet back toward her. She looked down at the spreadsheet. It was still perfect. It was still orderly. But next to it, the crumpled napkin with the jagged, compromised spiral looked decidedly more interesting. Tess took a sip of her coffee. It was lukewarm, but for the first time that morning she didn't mind. She opened a new tab on her browser. Search. Non-slip paint, outdoor grade, quick drying. If she was going to structure his chaos, she was going to do it right. Chapter 4. Weather warning. Rin knew the sky was angry because he'd run out of the right color to paint it. He sat at his easel in the corner of the cabin, staring at the small window. The light fading over the mountains wasn't gray, and it wasn't purple. It was the color of a bruise that hadn't decided if it was going to heal or turn gangrenous. Angry charcoal smudge, Rin muttered, mixing a dollop of Payne's gray with alizarin crimson. With a violent undercurrent of cancel your plans. Did you say something? Tess asked. She was sitting at his kitchen table, which was actually just a slab of reclaimed barnwood Rin had balanced on two sawhorses, surrounded by the glowing force field of her technology. The blue light of her tablet illuminated her face, making her look like a beautiful, stressed-out hologram. The mountains, Rin said, pointing his paintbrush at the window. They're holding their breath. Tess didn't look up from her screen. Mountains are geological formations, Rin. They don't respire. And according to the National Weather Service, we have a 40% chance of light flurries starting at 8 p.m. The National Weather Service sits in a windowless room in Denver, Rin countered. They don't know that the crows have been flying low since noon, or that my knee hurts. Your knee refers to orthopedics, not meteorology, Tess said, finally looking up. She adjusted her glasses. I have 3 vendor contracts to review, and I need to upload them before... She stopped. The cabin lights flickered. Once. Twice. That's just the grid saying hello, Rin said. though he felt a prickle of unease on the back of his neck. He stood up and walked to the window. It had started. It wasn't light flurries. It was an assault. The snow wasn't falling. It was being driven horizontally by a wind that screamed like a banshee. In the span of their conversation, the world outside had vanished, replaced by a swirling white void. "Tess," Rin said, his voice dropping the playful edge. "Pack up." "What?" "Pack up. Now. You need to leave." Tess frowned, looking at the window. "It's just snow. I have four-wheel drive, and I have to finish the indemnification clause for the firework launcher." "Tess, look outside." She stood up and walked to the window. Her breath hitched. The pine tree, which usually stood 10 feet from the cabin, was a ghost, barely visible through the curtain of white. "Oh," she said softly. "The pass closes when visibility drops below 50 feet, Rin said, grabbing his coat. "If you leave right now, you might beat the gate. But you have to go. Now." Tess scrambled to pack her tablet, shoving it into her bag with uncharacteristic haste. Okay, I'm going." Rin opened the cabin door, and the wind punched them both in the face. It was instant, biting cold that sucked the heat right out of your lungs. "My car!" Tess yelled over the wind. She pointed to the driveway, or where the driveway used to be. The silver rental SUV was gone. In its place was a smooth white mound, like a buried beetle. The wind had drifted the snow against the side of the cabin, burying the vehicle up to the windows in less than 20 minutes. That's not possible," Tess stammered, clutching her bag. "It was clear an hour ago." "Mountain weather," Rin grimaced. He stepped out onto the porch, sinking to his shins instantly. He waded toward the car, shielding his eyes. "Try to start it. I'll dig out the exhaust." Tess stumbled after him, fighting the wind. She wrenched the driver's door open. It groaned against the weight of the snow, and climbed inside. Rin scrambled to the back, using his hands to clear the tailpipe. "Turn it over." The engine sputtered, whined, and died. Again! Sputter. Whine. Click. Rin clawed at the snow around the wheels. It was heavy, wet cement. "Come on," he pleaded. "Just get her down the hill." But the mountain wasn't listening. The wind howled louder, stripping the heat from his fingers. He looked at the road leading down to town. It was gone. Erased. He went to the driver's side window. Tess was staring at the dashboard, her face pale. "It won't catch," she said, her voice trembling. "The battery. It's too cold." Rin looked at her. Her lips were already turning blue. "Get out," he said, "but I have to." "Tess, get out of the car. It's a freezer. You're not going anywhere." He practically dragged her out of the car and back toward the cabin. They stumbled through the drifts, the wind trying to knock them over with every step. They burst through the front door, slamming it shut against the gale. The sudden silence was deafening. Tess stood in the middle of the room, shivering violently. Patches of snow melted on her coat, dripping onto Rin's uneven floorboards. My phone," she chattered, pulling it out. "I need to call Huck. Tell him I'm stuck." She stared at the screen. "No bars," she whispered. "Tower's probably iced over," Rin said, moving to the wood stove to stoke the dying embers. "It happens." Tess looked at him, eyes wide. "So we're trapped," Rin finished. He threw a log into the stove. "Could be a few hours, could be—" He didn't finish the sentence. He knew these storms. It could be 3 days. Tess took a deep, shaky breath. Okay, I can handle this. I am adaptable. I will simply stay in the guest room." Rin froze. He poked the fire unnecessarily. "Rin," Tess prompted. "The guest room?" Rin turned slowly. He rubbed the back of his neck, leaving a smudge of Payne's gray on his skin. So, he started, a nervous laugh bubbling up. About the guest room. You said you had a second room, Tess said, narrowing her eyes. I do. Technically, architecturally. Rin walked to a narrow door next to the kitchen and opened it. Tess peered inside. It was a room, in the sense that it had 4 walls and a floor. But it was currently occupied by a stack of 42 unsold canvases, a drying rack for his bespoke luminarias, a taxidermied owl he was holding for a friend, approximately 0 beds. Tess stared at the owl. The owl stared back. It's storage, she said. It's a creative archive, Rin corrected. Tess turned around slowly. Her gaze swept the small cabin, the kitchen, 1 counter, the living area, easel and 2 chairs, and the sleeping loft, where there was exactly 1 bed, covered in 1 quilt. Rin, Tess said, her voice dangerously calm. I sleep on the couch, Rin offered quickly, pointing to the vintage velvet sofa that looked like it had survived a Victorian fainting spell. It's very comfortable, if you're under 5'2", which I am not, but I have great cartilage. Tess looked at the couch. It was lumpy. It was short. It was covered in sketchbooks. She looked at the window, where the storm was now burying the world in white silence. She looked at Rin, who was covered in paint and looking at her like she was a bomb he didn't know how to defuse. Adaptable, Tess repeated, though it sounded like she was trying to convince herself. She took off her coat. I am adaptable. She sat down at the kitchen table and opened her tablet again. What are you doing? Rin asked. I'm updating the risk assessment log, Tess said, typing furiously. New entry, act of God. Sub-entry, forced cohabitation with chaotic artist. Mitigation strategy, do not strangulate host. Rin smiled despite the storm. I'll make tea, he said. It's the only mitigation strategy I have. Chapter 5. Cabin Fever. Tess had been trapped in Rin's cabin for 14 hours, and she had already identified 17 safety hazards, 3 code violations, and 1 very annoying fact. Rin was good at being snowed in. While Tess paced the 12 feet of clear floor space like a caged tiger in a zoo for systems analysts, Rin was thriving. He was currently standing at the stove, stirring a pot of something that smelled suspiciously good, wearing thick wool socks and humming a song that sounded like synth pop played on a banjo. It's called kitchen sink stew, Rin announced, brandishing a wooden spoon, because I put everything in it except the sink. And the taxidermied owl. He's for garnish. Please tell me you're joking about the owl, Tess said, checking her phone for the 100th time. Still, no service. Still trapped. I never joke about garnish, Rin said, winking. Relax, engineer. The road crews won't even start plowing until the wind dies down. Sit. Eat. Panic burns too many calories. He ladled the stew into 2 mismatched bowls, one chipped ceramic, one that looked like it was handmade from river clay by a blindfolded child, and set them on the table. Tess sat. She looked at the stew. It was thick, hearty, and shockingly delicious. This is competent, she admitted after the first bite. I contain multitudes, Rin said, sitting opposite her. I can paint, I can cook, and I can juggle snowballs. I am a triple threat. You can juggle snowballs? Briefly, before they melt. Tess sighed, leaning back. The cabin was warm, smelling of wood smoke and the rich stew. Outside, the world was a white blur, but inside, it was cozy, aggressively cozy. The kind of cozy that made her want to drop her shoulders and forget about the deadlines ticking away in her head, which was dangerous. So, Tess said, gesturing to the corner where the coffee pot sat, a terrifying contraption that looked like a chemistry experiment gone wrong. Walk me through the coffee situation. If we're going to be here for days, I need caffeine. And that machine looks like it requires a PhD to operate. Ah, Rin beamed. The percolator of destiny. It's temperamental. You have to treat her with respect. And you have to hit it on the left side, right here. He tapped a dented spot on the metal. At exactly the moment it starts to gurgle. It's percussive maintenance. Percussive maintenance, Tess repeated. You hit it. With love, Rin corrected. I hit it with love. He stood up and demonstrated. He filled it with water, added grounds, and set it on the hot plate. When it began to hiss like an angry snake, he gave it a sharp, rhythmic thwack with the heel of his hand. The hissing smoothed into a gentle gurgle. See? Rin said. She responds to firm guidance, like a puppy, or a project manager. Tess laughed. She couldn't help it. It was a rusty sound, one she hadn't used much in the last few months. I do not respond to being hit, Rin. No, Rin said, his voice softening. You respond to logic and lists, which is why. He reached under the table and pulled out a notebook. I made you this. He slid it across the table. Tess opened it. It was a sketchbook, but Rin had drawn grid lines on the pages with a ruler, or maybe a straight stick. At the top of the first page, he had written in careful block letters, things Tess can control, a list. Tess stared at it. You made me a spreadsheet? It's an analog spreadsheet, Rin said. Since your battery is dying, I thought you could list, I don't know, inventory? Snowflakes? My annoying habits? Tess ran her finger over the paper. The lines were crooked. The ink was smudged. It was the messiest, sweetest thing anyone had done for her in a long time. Thank you, she whispered. Don't get used to it, Rin said, turning back to the stove to hide his face. I'm still chaos. I know you need a place to put the worry. That night, the awkwardness arrived. The sun went down, and the single room shrank. The loft loomed above them, the one bed mocking them with its singularity. I'll take the couch, Tess said firmly. I'm shorter. You are a guest, Rin argued, holding a pillow like a shield. Guest rights. It's in the mountain code. The couch is 5 feet long, Rin. You are 5'10". The geometry doesn't work. You'll wake up shaped like a pretzel. I am flexible. I do yoga. Occasionally, when I drop things. Rin, take the bed. They argued for 10 minutes. They flipped a coin. Tess won, Nirsch lost, depending on how you looked at it. Rin took the couch. Tess climbed the ladder to the loft. The bed was made with the quilt, the famous grandmother's quilt. It smelled of lavender and old fabric. She crawled under it, listening to the wind howl outside. Below her, she heard Rin shifting. Thump. Ow! You okay? Tess called down into the darkness. Fine. Rin's voice was strained. Just reconfiguring my spine. It's very orthopedic. Silence stretched between them. Rin? Yeah? The stew is really good. Thanks, engineer. And the list. Thank you for the list. Go to sleep, Tess. Tess closed her eyes. She expected to lie awake for hours, worrying about the festival, the broadcast, the failure waiting for her in Seattle. But wrapped in the lavender quilt, listening to Rin's breathing below, she fell asleep in minutes. And for the first time in months, she didn't dream about traffic jams. She dreamed about colors she couldn't name. Chapter 6. Creative Collaboration. By day 3, the snow had stopped, but the drifts were up to the roofline. They were buried in a white tomb, and they had run out of small talk. Ask me another one, Rin said. He was lying on the floor, staring at the ceiling, tossing a stress ball, which was actually a dried orange, into the air. Favorite structural disaster in history? Tess asked from the table, where she was organizing sticky notes on the wall in a complex color-coded pattern that represented the festival timeline. The Leaning Tower of Pisa, Rin answered without hesitation. It leaned, and instead of fixing it, they just said, "A, gives it character. That is my aesthetic." Tess smiled, adding a pink note, pyrotechnics setup, to the wall. Yours would be the Tacombe Narrows Bridge. It tried to dance. Too soon, Rin said, catching the orange. He sat up. Okay, my turn. Favorite color? That's a boring question. It's a foundational question. It tells me the frequency of your soul. Tess hesitated. Pantone 289C. It's a deep navy. Reliable. Professional. Calming. Boring, Rin declared. Mine is the color of the sky right before a storm breaks. That weird electric green-gray. It feels like waiting for something to happen. He got up and walked over to her wall of sticky notes. He tilted his head. You know, he said, tracing a line in the air, if you move the vendor load in here and overlap it with the sound check, you create a bottleneck at the north gate. Tess looked. She blinked. You're right. How did you see that? You don't read Gantt charts? I don't see a chart, Rin said, shrugging. I see the flow. It's like a river. If you put a rock there, he pointed to the vendor sticky. The water backs up here. You need to let it flow around. He reached out, his hand hovering over her perfect system. May I? Tess nodded, fascinated. Rin moved the sticky notes. He didn't just move them, he rearranged the entire Saturday afternoon block. He grouped tasks not by time, but by location and energy. See? He said, stepping back. Now the sound guys are checking mics while the food trucks are setting up in the south lot. The noise doesn't bleed and the traffic patterns don't cross. It's harmonious, Tess finished. She looked at the wall. It was messy. It wasn't chronological, but it made perfect, intuitive sense. You, she said, looking at him, are a logistical savant. Don't insult me, Rin grinned. I'm just painting with time. Tess laughed, and the sound felt lighter than before. She looked at Rin, really looked at him. He hadn't shaved in 3 days. His hair was a disaster. He was wearing the same flannel shirt, and he was compelling. Okay, Mozart of logistics, she said. What about the lighting cue for the finale? I can't get the timing right with the fireworks. Show me. They spent the next 4 hours working, really working. Tess brought the structure, the hard limits of time, physics, and budget. Rin brought the fluidity, the emotional beats, the visual impact, the vibes. They argued, they erased, they laughed. At one point, Rin got so excited about a lighting transition he jumped on the table to demonstrate the angle of glory. Tess realized she wasn't just tolerating his chaos anymore. She was enjoying it. It was the spark that her engine had been missing. We make a good team, Rin said, breathless, jumping down from the table. He landed close to her. Too close. The air in the cabin shifted again. It wasn't the trapped tension. It was something else. Gravity. We do, Tess said, her voice barely a whisper. Rin looked at her, his eyes searching hers. The playfulness dropped away, leaving something raw and terrified in its place. He reached out, his hand hovering near her waist, frozen in indecision. Then Tess yawned. A massive, jaw-cracking yawn she couldn't suppress. The moment shattered. Wow, Rin laughed, stepping back, rubbing his neck. I am boring you to sleep. That's a new record. No, Tess murmured, her eyes drooping. Not boring, just safe. I feel safe. She sat down at the table, intending to rest her head for just a second on her arms. Just 5 minutes, she mumbled. Then we figure out the biodegradable confetti. She was asleep before her head hit her sleeve. Rin watched her. He watched the way her glasses slid down her nose. He watched the tension finally leave her shoulders. Safe, he whispered to the empty room. He felt a pang in his chest so sharp it almost hurt. Startled, he realized he didn't want to be the chaos meant to disrupt her life. He wanted to be the safety she fell into. He walked over and gently, so gently, scooped her up. She was lighter than he expected, but she felt solid in his arms. An anchor. He carried her to the ladder. It was impossible to carry her up, so he turned to the couch. He laid her down on the velvet cushions, tucking her legs in. Then he went to the loft, grabbed the grandmother's quilt, and brought it down. He covered her, tucking the edges in around her shoulders. "Sleep tight, engineer," he whispered. He sat in the chair opposite her, picking up his sketchbook. He turned to a fresh page. He didn't draw the festival. He didn't draw the storm. He drew Tess, sleeping under his grandmother's quilt, looking like the only plan he ever wanted to stick to. Chapter 7. Midnight Confessions. Tess woke up because the cold had found a way under the quilt. The fire in the wood stove had died down to a dull orange glower, and the cabin was steeped in shadows. The wind outside had lost its shriek, replaced by a low, mournful moan. She sat up on the couch, rubbing her eyes. Her neck was stiff, and her mind was instantly awake, racing through a checklist of structural loads and confetti biodegradability rates. "Stop it," she whispered to her brain. "It is..." She checked her watch. 3:14 a.m. No one cares about confetti right now. She pushed the quilt aside and stood up, tiptoeing across the freezing floorboards to the wood stove. She opened the latch and tossed in a small log, watching the sparks dance up the flue. "Can't sleep?" The voice came from the loft, soft and scratchy with sleep. Tess jumped, nearly dropping the poker. "Rin, sorry, I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't." The silence did. Rin's face appeared at the edge of the loft, framed by his wild curls. "The wind stopped. It's too quiet. It's suspicious." He climbed down the ladder, wrapped in a blanket like an oversized burrito. He walked over to the stove and sat on the floor next to her, extending his hands toward the warmth. "Your brain is loud," Rin observed. "I can hear the gears grinding from up there." Tess pulled her knees to her chest. "It's the festival. We have 6 days, and we're stuck here." "The plow will be here tomorrow," Rin said. "Huck knows where I live. He probably sent the cavalry already." "What if we fail?" Tess asked. The question slipped out before she could stop it, small and fragile in the dark room. Rin looked at her. In the firelight, his eyes were pools of warm amber. "We won't. You fix the timeline. I fix the vibes. We're unstoppable." "I failed before," Tess said. She hadn't meant to say it. She hadn't told anyone. Not really. Her parents knew the headline, "Traffic Jam," but they didn't know the shame. "Seattle," Rin said softly. "The bridge." Tess flinched. "You know." "I have internet." Rin shrugged. "Sometimes, when the wind blows south." "I looked you up. Algorithm Queen causes gridlock apocalypse." It was a catchy headline. "It was a disaster," Tess whispered. "It was one variable. Geese. Who programs for geese?" But the sensor tripped, the bridge went up, the signals locked, and 40,000 people were stuck for 6 hours. Ambulances couldn't get through. People missed flights. Weddings. She buried her face in her knees. "I built a perfect system, Rin, and it broke because nature didn't read the manual." Rin was quiet for a long time. Then he reached out and poked her knee. Do you know why I live in a cabin with a taxidermied owl and no microwave? Tess looked up. Because you cherish the aesthetic of poverty? Because I was left at the altar. Tess stared at him. What? 2 years ago, Sarah, she was perfect, organized. Like you, actually. We planned everything. The venue, the flowers, the specific shade of napkins. And then, 10 minutes before the ceremony, she came into the dressing room. Rin poked the fire with a stick. She told me she couldn't do it. She said I was beautiful chaos. But you can't build a house on chaos. She said she'd spend her whole life waiting for me to explode. Oh, Rin, Tess breathed. I didn't argue, Rin said, a sad smile touching his lips. Because she was right. I start things. I don't finish them. I paint feelings, not structures. I'm unreliable. You're not unreliable, Tess said firmly. You're just non-linear. I'm a mess, Tess. That's why I'm here. If I stay in the cabin, I can't let anyone down. I can't break anything. Tess looked at him. She saw the fear behind the jokes, the loneliness behind the glitter. She saw a mirror of her own terrified heart. You didn't break the timeline, Tess said. You fixed it. You saw the flow when I only saw the blocks. And you, Rin said, turning to face her fully, didn't break the bridge. The geese did. You can't control the geese, Tess. You can only control how you react to them. He reached out and took her hand. His fingers were warm, rough with calluses and paint. We make a good team, Rin whispered. The engineer and the artist. We balance. Tess looked at their joined hands. Balance is good. Balance is stable. Screw stable, Rin murmured, leaning closer. I want resonance. The air between them crackled, hotter than the stove. Tess stopped thinking about load capacities. She stopped thinking about timelines. She looked at Rin's mouth, the way it curved up at the corner, the way it trembled slightly. Resonance, Tess whispered. That's structurally significant. Kiss me, Tess, Rin said, before I think of a reason why I shouldn't. Tess didn't think. She leaned in. It wasn't a perfect kiss. Their noses bumped. Rin's blanket got in the way. But then Rin's hand cupped her jaw, his thumb tracing her cheekbone, and everything aligned. It was warm. It was chaotic. It was the variable she hadn't programmed for, and it was the only thing that made sense. Tess sighed into the kiss, her fingers tangling in Rin's messy curls. She felt the fear inside her, the fear of failure, of judgment, dissolve, replaced by a heat that had nothing to do with the fire. For the first time in months, she wasn't thinking about the future. She was exactly, perfectly, in the present. Chapter 8. The morning after. Rin woke up with a crick in his neck and a woman in his arms. He froze. His heart did a complicated drum solo against his ribs. Tess. She was asleep against his chest, her breathing steady and soft. Her glasses were on the floor, miraculously unbroken. In the harsh light of morning, because apparently the sun had decided to be blindingly cheerful today, she looked younger, softer, and terrifying. Rin remembered the kiss. He remembered the way she'd sighed his name. He remembered feeling, for the first time in 2 years, that he wasn't just a collection of loose ends, but a whole person. And that was the problem. He was Rin Moretti. He was the guy who forgot to pay the electric bill. He was the guy who painted lightning bolts on trees because straight lines were hard. He was the beautiful chaos that people eventually got tired of cleaning up. Tess was Tess. She was structure. She was safe. She deserved someone who didn't keep taxidermied owls for friends. Oh God. Rin whispered to the ceiling. I'm going to ruin her. Tess stirred. Her eyelashes fluttered. Panic, cold and sharp, seized Rin's chest. He couldn't do this. He couldn't let her wake up and see the regret he was sure would follow. He couldn't watch her do the morning after math, where she realized he was a bad investment. He gently, very gently, untangled himself. He slid a pillow into his place, a classic cowardly move. He grabbed his clothes and fled to the kitchen. By the time Tess walked out, rubbing her eyes and looking devastatingly cute in her wrinkled sweater, Rin was aggressively making coffee. He was vibrating with caffeine and anxiety. Morning, he chirped. His voice was too high. He sounded like a chipmunk on espresso. Coffee is ready. The sun is out. The plow is coming. I heard the engine. Tess blinked, confused by the wall of sound. Rin, about last night. Last night was weather, Rin interrupted, pouring coffee so fast it sloshed over the rim. Cabin fever, high-altitude oxygen deprivation, totally normal biological response to thermal isolation. Tess stiffened. She put her glasses on, and the softness vanished. The engineer returned. Biological response? She repeated flatly. Exactal. Rin laughed. A brittle sound. We were stressed. We sought endorphins. It's science. No big deal. He couldn't look at her. If he looked at her, he would crumble. Right, Tess said. Her voice was cool, distant. Science. A loud rumble shook the cabin. A horn honked. The plow! Rin yelled, running to the door like he was escaping a prison break. Huck sent the plow. We're saved. He threw the door open. A massive yellow snowplow was clearing the bottom of the driveway. The driver waved. Tess walked past him. She picked up her bag. She put on her coat. She didn't look at him. I should go, she said. I have to check the structural integrity of the main stage. Right. Yes. Go. Save the festival. She walked out into the snow. Rin watched her go, feeling like he'd just amputated his own heart with a dull spoon. His phone buzzed on the table. Service was back. Caller ID. Violet Krishnan. Rin stared at it. He wiped his hands on his jeans and answered. Violet? Hey. Rin. Violet's crisp voice cut through the static. Good news. The network approved the broadcast budget, and they love the spiral stage concept. But there's a catch. Of course there is. They want Tess. Specifically. The VP remembered her from Seattle. He says if she can pull this off, he wants her in LA, Senior Systems Director for the West Coast Division. It's a huge redemption arc, Rin. But she has to leave Lockhart Valley on January 2nd. Rin felt the blood drain from his face. LA. Big salary. Big projects. A life where she wouldn't have to worry about broken bridges or chaotic artists. Does she know? Rin asked. I'm calling her next. I just wanted to give you a heads up. You guys seemed close. We're not, Rin said quickly. We're just colleagues. She belongs in LA, Violet. This place is too small for her. If you say so, Violet said, sounding unconvinced. See you in town. Click. Rin lowered the phone. He looked at the empty driveway where Tess had just driven away. See? He told the empty room. She's leaving anyway. You just saved yourself the heartbreak. But as he looked at the coffee cup she'd left on the table, still warm, lipstick stain on the rim, he knew he was lying. He hadn't saved himself anything. He'd just ensured that the heartbreak would be permanent. Chapter 9. Professional Stakes. Tess was a professional. She repeated this mantra as she drove down the mountain road, knuckles white on the steering wheel. I am a professional. I solve problems. I do not cry over artists who treat intimacy like a biological response. She pulled into the cafe parking lot. slamming the door of her rental SUV. She marched inside, radiating an energy that cleared a path to the counter. "Coffee," she told Margot. "Black. Intravenously, if possible." Margot looked at her. She looked at the smudged makeup. Tess hadn't checked a mirror. The wrinkled clothes, and the distinct aura of heartbreak and fury. "That bad?" Margot asked, sliding a cinnamon roll across the counter. "On the house. You look like you need sugar and violence." "I need a contract," Tess said, taking a bite of the roll. It was warm and gooey and almost made her cry. "I need data. I need things that don't change their mind in the morning." The bell chimed. Violet Krishnan walked in. She looked perfect, as always. Cashmere coat, leather boots, hair so sleek it probably had its own PR team. "Tess!" Violet waved, walking over. "Thank God you survived the storm. Huck was losing his mind." "I'm fine," Tess said, wiping sugar from her lip. "We were productive. The timeline is fixed." "Excellent." Violet sat down. "Because I have news. Big news." She placed a folder on the table. "The network is in. Fully. But they have conditions. They want the spiral stage Rin pitched, and they want you to run point. On everything. Logistics, safety, broadcast coordination." "Okay," Tess said. "I can do that." "And," Violet leaned in, her eyes gleaming, "if this goes well, there's a job offer. LA, senior director, proper salary, full benefits, and a corner office with a view of something other than snow." Tess stared at the folder. It was everything she had wanted. Redemption. A return to her old life. Proof that she wasn't just the bridge failure girl. "LA?" Tess asked. "Starting January 2nd, Violet nodded. "You'd have to pack up and go immediately after the festival. But Tess, it's the big leagues. It's where you belong." Tess looked around the cafe. She saw Huck arguing with the mayor about reindeer rental. She saw Rory taking photos of a latte art masterpiece. She saw the community she had spent the last week organizing, stressing over, and falling for. And she thought of Rin. Rin, who had held her hand in the dark. Rin, who had pushed her away the moment the sun came up. "He thinks we were just a biological response," she thought bitterly. "He doesn't want me to stay." "I'll do it," Tess said. Her voice sounded hollow. "Fantastic." Violet clapped her hands. "Now, the bad news. The network wants a full rehearsal in 48 hours, with lights, and the stage built." 48 hours? Tess blinked. "That's impossible. We're still waiting on the lumber delivery." "Make it possible," Violet said, standing up. "Show them you're the miracle worker I told them you are." Tess watched her leave. She looked down at the folder. Senior director. It was a ticket out. A ticket away from the pain in her chest. She grabbed a tablet. She opened the master schedule. She deleted the entry for coffee with Rin. "Fine," Tess whispered. "You want a miracle? I'll give you a miracle. And then I'll give you my resignation." Chapter 10. Community Mobilization. Rin was painting a lie. He stood on the scaffolding next to the town hall, his brush moving in angry, jagged strokes. The mural was supposed to be a celebration of community, unity in the valley, but right now, it looked more like panic in the disco. "Too much yellow," he muttered, swiping a violent streak of blue over a sunbeam. "It looks like a radioactive egg yolk." Beneath him, the town square was a beehive of organized chaos. And at the center of the hive was Queen Bee herself, Tess. She was everywhere. 1 minute she was by the stage, directing a forklift with hand signals that looked like a SWAT team commander. The next, she was at the catering tent, inspecting extension cords. She moved with a frightening efficiency, her tablet wielded like a weapon. The town loved it. "She's a marvel, isn't she?" Huck yelled up to him, pausing on the sidewalk with a box of decorations. We haven't been this ahead of schedule since the great blizzards of '98. She's a robot, Rin called down, focusing intently on a painted pine cone. A highly efficient, captivating robot who is leaving on January 2nd. Huck frowned. Leaving? Why? LA, Rin said, the words tasting like turpentine. Big job. Big city. Where she belongs. Huh. Huck scratched his beard. Does she know she belongs there? Or did you decide that for her? Rin ignored him. He didn't need a lecture from a man who named his truck Bessie. He looked back at Tess. She was laughing at something Rory said. A rare, genuine laugh that made Rin's chest ache. She looked tired, though. There were shadows under her eyes, and she was drinking coffee like it was water. She was working herself to exhaustion to prove she didn't care. And it was all Rin's fault. Hey, artist boy. Rin looked down. Rory was standing there, camera pointed up. Smile, or scowl, whatever represents your current level of tortured genius. Click. Stop documenting my misery, Rin warned. It's not misery, it's pining, Rory corrected. And it's trending. The Odd Festival romance tag creates 40% more engagement than the snow sculpture tag. There is no romance, Rin said, climbing down the scaffolding. There is only logistics. Right. Rory rolled their eyes. And I'm straight. Look, Rin. The whole town sees it. Margot is taking bets on when you'll crack. The odds are currently 2-1 against you making it to New Year's. Margot creates a gambling ring? Rin sighed. Of course she did. He wiped his hands on a rag. Tess is leaving, Rory. She got a job offer. This, whatever this is, it has an expiration date. So does milk, Rory pointed out. Doesn't mean you don't enjoy cookies while you can. Rin walked away. He needed to be busy. He needed to create something harmless. He found himself back at the mural. He picked up a smaller brush. Without thinking, he started painting the crowd at the bottom of the mural. He painted Huck. He painted Margot. He painted Rory with their camera. And then, in the corner, almost hidden in the painted shadows of the mountains, he painted a woman. She was wearing a charcoal coat and holding a tablet. She was looking up at the painted mountains, not down at her screen. And she was smiling. It was Tess. But not the professional Tess. It was the Tess from the cabin. The soft, safe Tess who had fallen asleep under his grandmother's quilt. Damn it, Rin whispered, stepping back. He couldn't even paint a crowd scene without putting her in it. She was in the landscape. She was in the air. She was the structure holding up his chaos, and he was letting her walk away because he was too scared to ask her to stay. Rin! He turned. Tess was marching toward him. She looked furious. The biodegradable confetti, she announced, stopping 3 feet away. It arrived. Great, Rin said, forcing a smile. Is it festive? It is brown, Tess said. It looks like mulch. Rin, we cannot drop 500 pounds of mulch on the crowd at midnight. They will think it's a landslide. Brown? Rin blinked. I ordered Eco Gold. You ordered from a site called earthfirstpartysupplies.org. It is recycled cardboard. It is mulch. Rin looked at her. Her cheeks were flushed. Her eyes were bright with stress. She was beautiful. We can paint it, Rin said. Paint the mulch? Spray paint, gold spray paint. We get the shop class on it. It'll dry in an hour. Tess stared at him. That defeats the biodegradable part, Rin. Spray paint is toxic. Not the soy-based kind. I have crates of it at the cabin. We can fix this, Tess. We can fix anything. He meant the confetti. He meant them. Tess looked at him, and for a second, the anger wavered. Soy-based? She asked. Guaranteed. Even the owls approve. A small smile tugged at her lips. Fine. Get the paint. I'll organize the shop class. She turned to leave, then paused. Nice mural, she said, nodding at the wall. The woman in the corner, she looks happy. She is, Rin said, his voice quiet. She's home. Tess looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded once and walked away. Rin watched her go. He had told the truth in paint. Now he just had to find the courage to say it in words. Chapter 11. Technical Disasters. 48 hours before the festival, the universe decided to test Tess's blood pressure medication, which she didn't take, but was seriously considering prescribed. It started with the sound system. Feedback loop, the audio tech said, wrestling with a cable that looked like a confused snake. Every time I push the fader for the main mic, it sounds like a banshee trapped in a blender. Fix it, Tess said, checking her watch. You have 20 minutes before the choir arrives. Next, the lighting rig. They're blue, Tess said, staring at the stage. Rin specifically ordered warm amber. These are radioactive Chernobyl. Supplier mix-up, Huck apologized, wringing his hands. They're sold out of amber. This is all they had. We can't light a romantic holiday festival in crime scene blue, Tess rubbed her temples. People will look like zombies. Then, the coup de grace. A loud pop echoed across the square, followed by the sickening sound of silence. The string lights went dark. The stage lights died. Even the coffee maker in the catering tent groaned and gave up the ghost. The main breaker, someone yelled. Tess froze. She looked at her tablet. Battery, 12%. The grid, she whispered. We overloaded the town grid. She ran to the main power box. Smoke was curling lazily from the panel. It's fried, Huck said, appearing beside her. The transformer blew. We need a replacement part from the city. It won't be here until Tuesday. Tuesday? The festival was tomorrow. No, Tess said. The panic was rising, cold and familiar. This was the bridge all over again. A single point of failure. A disaster she should have predicted. We have generators? Fuel shortage, Huck reminded her. The delivery truck is stuck in the pass. Tess leaned against the brick wall of the town hall. She slid down until she was sitting in a snowdrift. She had failed. Again. She had come here to prove she was competent, and instead, she had plunged a small town into darkness on national television. Violet would fire her. The town would lose its funding. Rin would. Rin. He appeared in front of her, blocking out the gray sky. He wasn't panicking. He didn't look like he was watching a disaster. He looked like a kid looking at a pile of Legos. So, Rin said, we have no power, no amber lights, and a sound system that screams. Go away, Rin, Tess said, burying her face in her hands. I broke it. I tried to optimize it, and I broke it. You didn't break it, Rin said, squatting down. You just reached the capacity of the boring system. He stood up and clapped his hands. Okay, listen up. Who has a car battery? The volunteers looked around, confused. Car batteries, Rin yelled. I need 6 of them. And mirrors. Everyone bring every mirror you have in your house. Full length, compact, I don't care. Rin, what are you doing? Tess asked, looking up. We're going analog. Rin grinned. Huck, get the candles. All of them. The ones from the church. The ones from the store. The emergency stash. Candles. Tess stood up. You can't light a stage with candles. Watch me. For the next 4 hours, Tess watched a miracle. Rin didn't fix the grid. He bypassed it. He wired the sound system to a daisy chain of car batteries. It's DC power, cleaner signal anyway, he explained. He placed hundreds of candles in jars along the front of the stage. And then, the mirrors. He positioned mirrors behind the candles, angling them to reflect the light outward. It amplifies the lumens, Rin explained, adjusting a bathroom vanity mirror he'd propped on a crate. Old theater trick. Before electricity, they used polished brass. We're using whatever this is. As the sun set, they lit the candles. The effect wasn't broadcast standard. It was better. The stage glowed, a soft, flickering, golden light that danced and breathed. It turned the snow into diamonds. It made the blue LEDs, which Rin had covered with orange cellophane wrappers from candy bars, look like distant stars. It was magical. Violet arrived with the camera crew. Tess held her breath, waiting for the criticism. "It looks," Violet whispered, looking at the monitor. "It looks authentic. The camera loves it. The warmth is incredible." Tess let out a breath she'd been holding since noon. She looked for Rin. He was standing by the soundboard, covered in soot, wax, and triumph. He caught her eye and winked. Tess walked over to him. She didn't have her tablet. She didn't have a plan. "You fixed it," she said. "We fixed it," Rin corrected. "You organized the battery collection. I just provided the madness." "It's beautiful," Tess said. "It's resonant." Rin's smile faltered. He looked at her with that same intensity from the cabin. "Tess," he started, "about L.A." "Don't," Tess said quickly. She couldn't handle the goodbye speech right now, not when everything felt so fragile and perfect. "Let's just get through the festival, please." Rin nodded slowly. "Okay. Festival first." "Festival first," Tess agreed. But as she walked away to check the camera angles, she knew the truth. The festival was saved. But her heart was still a disaster waiting to happen. Chapter 12. Breakthrough. It was 11 p.m. on the night before the festival. The rehearsals were done. The town square was quiet, bathed in the soft flicker of the test candles Rin had left burning. Rin was sitting on the edge of the stage, his legs dangling over the drop. He was exhausted. His hands were stained with soot and wax, and his knee was throbbing. But he couldn't leave. This was his spot. The place where the magic happened. Or where the tragedy happened. "You look like a gargoyle," a voice said. Rin smiled without turning. "Gargoyles serve a structural purpose. They drain water. I'm just brooding." Tess sat down next to him. She wasn't wearing her coat, just a thick wool sweater that made her look touchable. She was holding 2 steaming cups. "Cocoa," she said, handing him one. "With the little marshmallows." I counted. "You have exactly 12. "A precise number." Rin took the cup. "Thank you, engineer." They sat in silence, sipping the cocoa. The air was cold, but the heat from the candles and Tess kept the chill at bay. "We did it," Tess said softly. "It's going to work." "It is," Rin agreed. "You saved us, Tess. The town. They're going to be okay." "Rin saved us," Tess corrected. "I just moved the pieces around. You brought the light." She turned to him. "Why did you push me away?" The question hung in the air, heavier than the snow. Rin looked at his boots. "Because I'm a risk, Tess. A bad one. You have a shiny new job in L.A. You have a career to rebuild. You can't do that if you're anchored to a guy who uses candy wrappers as lighting filters." "Is that what you think you are?" Tess asked. "An anchor?" "I'm chaos, Tess. You crave structure. Eventually, the novelty wears off. Eventually, you realize I forgot to pay the insurance premium, or I painted the cat blue." "I don't just want structure," Tess said. Her voice was trembling. "I want safety. I want to know that when the bridge breaks, someone will be there to help me swim." She set her cocoa down. She reached out and took his face in her hands. "You made me a list, Rin. You held me when I fell asleep. You didn't fix me. You just sat with me in the mess until it wasn't scary anymore. Rin looked at her. He saw the tears in her eyes. He saw the fierce determination that had organized a festival in 10 days. I'm scared, Rin whispered. I'm scared you'll leave. I'm scared too, Tess admitted. But I'm more scared of a life that's perfectly organized and empty. She leaned in. This kiss wasn't like the one in the cabin. That was desperate. This was deliberate. It tasted like cocoa and wood smoke. It was slow, deep, and terrifyingly real. Rin wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close, burying his face in her neck. He felt her sigh, a sound of pure relief. For the first time in his life, Rin didn't feel scattered. He didn't feel like a collection of broken parts. He felt whole. They broke apart, breathless. Stay, Rin whispered against her forehead. Please, stay. Tess closed her eyes. I have to leave tomorrow, Rin. The job. I know, Rin said. I know. Just stay tonight. Stay with me now. Always, Tess said. They didn't go back to the cabin. They went to the small heated trailer backstage, the green room that was really just a camper van Huck had donated. It wasn't the Ritz, but it was warm. And as Rin pulled Tess close under a pile of spare blankets, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He had painted the vibes. She had built the structure. Now, they just had to figure out how to keep the roof from caving in when the real world came knocking in the morning. Chapter 13. New Year's Eve, the festival. Tess was in the zone. She sat behind the drummer's riser, tucked into a makeshift command center constructed from 3 folding tables and a lot of duct tape. On her screens, 4 camera feeds, the live broadcast countdown, a weather radar, clear, and a heart rate monitor, her own, currently trending high. 2 minutes to air, the floor director shouted. The town square was unrecognizable. The spiral stage rose like a golden wave from the snow, lit by Rin's miracle mirrors and hundreds of flickering candles. The crowd was massive: tourists, locals, people who had driven 3 hours because Rory's TikTok of the car battery Christmas went viral. Stand by camera 1, Tess said into her headset. Cue the choir. Rin, you're on deck in 30. Copy that, Commander. Rin's voice crackled in her ear. I am currently preventing the mayor from eating the prop fruit. It is going well. Tess smiled. It was chaos, but it was organized chaos. 10 seconds. 9, 8. The music started. The cameras swept over the crowd. The lights flared. Warm, golden, perfect. For the next 2 hours, Tess didn't think about leaving. She didn't think about LA. She was a conductor, and this festival was her symphony. When the sound system glitched during the jazz quartet, Tess signaled Rin. He jumped on stage, grabbed a tambourine, and turned the awkward silence into an impromptu crowd clap, along until the audio patch held. When the wind picked up, threatening the backdrop, Tess redeployed the heavy-set security guards to hold the frame from behind, hidden by the scenery. They were a machine. Art and science. Fire and ice. Violet Krishnan stood next to Tess, watching the monitors. She wasn't frowning. She was grinning. Look at those ratings, Violet murmured, pointing to the live analytics. We're beating the Times Square pre-show. People love this. It's real. It's held together by duct tape and hope, Tess muttered, cueing the next pyro effect. That's what makes it good TV, Violet said. She turned to Tess. You did this. You took a disaster and made it a destination. Rin did it, Tess said, not taking her eyes off the screen. I just made sure the stage didn't collapse. You're a pair, Violet noted. A very profitable pair. On the screen, Rin was interviewing Mrs. Gable about her prize-winning fruitcake. He was charming, funny, and completely at ease. He looked at the camera, and for a split second, it felt like he was looking right at Tess. "I'm leaving tomorrow," Tess thought. The realization hit her like a cymbal crash. "I'm going back to a glass office and a silent apartment, and he's staying here with his owl in his mountains." 5 minutes to midnight, the director called. "Set up for the finale." "Rin," Tess said into the mic, "get to position 1. Fireworks launch in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. "Copy," Rin said. "Tess?" "Busy. Rin. Go." "Just nice work, engineer. Really nice work." Tess swallowed the lump in her throat. "Go be charming, artist. We have a show to finish." She watched him run through the crowd, high-fiving kids, dodging cables. He reached the center of the stage, breathless and beaming. He was the heart of this place, and she was just the pacemaker, essential for a moment, but not part of the body. Chapter 14. Fireworks and Choices. 1 minute. Rin stood center stage, microphone in hand. The crowd was roaring. The energy was electric. Literally, thanks to the car batteries. 60 seconds to the new year, Rin shouted. "Are we ready to say goodbye to the old one?" The crowd cheered. Rin looked toward the tech tent. He couldn't see Tess, but he knew she was there, watching the monitors, counting the seconds, preparing to leave. Violet was standing in the wings, holding a blue folder. The contract. Rin's heart hammered against his ribs. This was it. The climax of the movie. The part where the hero lets the heroine go because he loves her too much to hold her back. "Do the right thing, Rin," he told himself. "Let her go. Let her be great." 30 seconds. Tess emerged from the tent. She was walking toward the stage. Violet intercepted her, handing her the folder. Rin watched. The world seemed to slow down. The snow, the lights, the cheering crowd. It all faded into a blur. Tess took the folder. She looked at it. She looked at Violet. Then she looked up. At him. Usage of distance, 40 feet. Usage of obstacles. 1 railing, 3 security guards, and a small choir. 10, 9, the crowd chanted. Tess handed the folder back to Violet. Rin blinked. 8, 7. She started running. Not walking. Running. She vaulted the security barrier. Very un-OSHA compliant. She dodged a cameraman. 6, 5. She ran up the stage steps. She was breathless. Her hair was coming out of her ponytail. She looked like a catastrophe. She looked perfect. 4, 3. "Tess?" Rin said into the mic, which was still live, broadcasting to 3 million homes. "What are you doing?" "The contract." "Burn it!" Tess yelled, grabbing his lapels. "I don't want LA. I hate traffic." 2. "But your career," Rin argued, frantically aware of the audience. "The structure. The safety." "Screw safety," Tess shouted. "I need chaos. I need owls. I need you." 1. Happy New Year. The fireworks launched. Boom, crackle, gold and silver rain. Rin didn't look at the fireworks. He looked at Tess. "You need me?" he asked, his voice cracking. "The math doesn't work without you," Tess said. "None of it works." Rin dropped the mic. Feedback screech. 100 decibels. No one cared. He grabbed her face and kissed her. It was messy. It was public. It was snowy. It was the best kiss in the history of kisses. The crowd went wilder than they did for the fireworks. Rory was filming it from 3 feet away, screaming, "Content gold." Rin pulled back, breathless, forehead resting against hers. "I love you," he whispered. "I love your systems. I love your lists. I love that you color-code your anxiety." "I love you," Tess laughed, tears streaming down her face. I love your chaos. I love your paint. I even love the owl. Let's not go that far. Rin grinned. The owl is creepy. He hugged her tight, lifting her off the ground as the eco-gold confetti, spray-painted mulch, rained down on them. It was heavy. It hurt a little. It was messy, painful, and glorious. It was exactly the kind of disaster he wanted to keep. Chapter 15. Resolution. The next morning, the Mountain View Cafe was quiet, the kind of quiet that follows a hurricane or a miracle. Violet Krishnan sat at the corner table reviewing footage on her tablet. She looked impeccable, as always, though there was a smudge of gold paint on her cuff. Tess and Rin walked in together. They were holding hands. They looked exhausted, disheveled, and disgustingly happy. "Well," Violet said, not looking up, "that was dramatic." "It was authentic," Rin said, pulling out a chair for Tess. "You said you wanted authentic." "I wanted small-town charm, not telenovela in a snowbank," Violet noted. She tapped the screen. However, the ratings peaked during the mic drop kiss. Social media is melting down. Hashtag mulch confetti is trending. "Sorry about the mulch," Tess winced. "We'll sweep it up." "Don't bother." Violet closed her tablet. "So, you turned down the LA job." "I did," Tess said firmly. "I can't go back to that life, Violet. I realized. I don't want to fix bridges for strangers. I want to build things for people I know." "And I," Rin added, squeezing Tess's hand, "have realized that having a project manager improves my quality of life by roughly 400%. "Touching," Violet said dryly. She reached into her bag and pulled out a second blue folder. "I anticipated this," she said. "You two are predictable, in a opposites attract algorithm sort of way." She slid the folder across the table. "What is this?" Tess asked. "A counteroffer," Violet said. "The network doesn't want just one festival. They want a series. Holidays in the Valley. 4 specials a year. Valentine's, 4th of July, Halloween, and New Year's." Rin blinked. "Here? In Lockhart?" "Exclusively," Violet nodded. "We need a local production team, a creative director for the vibes, and a technical lead for the making sure we don't die part." Rin and Tess looked at each other. "We can stay?" Tess whispered. "You can stay," Violet smiled. "And you get paid. A lot. Enough to fix the grid properly, Tess. Enough to pay off the cabin, Rin." Rin looked at Tess. 4 festivals a year? That's a lot of chaos." "I have a spreadsheet for that," Tess smiled. "Then we're in," Rin said. He grabbed the folder. "Where do we sign? Do I need a special pen? I have a quill somewhere." "Use a ballpoint, Rin," Tess said, handing him one from her pocket. He signed. She signed. Violet toasted them with her coffee cup. "Welcome to show business. Try not to kiss on camera every time. It loses impact." "No promises." Rin grinned, leaning over to kiss Tess on the cheek. Outside, the snow began to fall again. Soft, gentle flakes that covered the mulch and the tire tracks, turning the valley into a blank canvas, ready for whatever they decided to paint next. Epilogue. 1 year later. December 31st. Tess stood in the doorway of the cabin checking her tablet. Wind speed, negligible. Temperature, 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Confetti, status, 100% paper, non-mulch. "Schedule check," she called out. "We are ahead of schedule," a voice called from the kitchen, "which is boring, but acceptable." Rin walked out. He was wearing a tuxedo. Well, he was wearing the top half of a tuxedo. The bottom half was still his paint-splattered jeans, and he was barefoot. You have to put on the pants, Rin, Tess said, walking over to fix his tie. The pants are restrictive, Rin complained. They stifle my creative walk. The pants are mandatory for the broadcast. Tess kissed his chin. You are the face of holidays in the valley. You cannot be the face and knees. Fine, Rin sighed. He wrapped his arms around her waist. Happy anniversary, engineer. Happy anniversary, artist. Tess smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. It had been a wild year. The Valentine's special had involved a chocolate fountain explosion. The 4th of July had seen a rogue firework ignite the mayor's gazebo, briefly. But they had survived. The cabin had changed. There was a desk now, next to the easel. A second coffee maker, a normal one, sat next to the percolator of destiny. And the bed in the loft, well, the quilt was still there. Ready to go? Rin asked. Huck is panicking about the ice sculpture. Huck is always panicking, Tess said. It's his process. Rin pulled back and looked at her. He reached behind the easel and pulled out a small canvas. For you, he said. Before the madness starts? Tess took it. It was a painting of the cabin in the snow, but it wasn't abstract. It wasn't vibes. It was precise. The lines of the roof were straight. The perspective was perfect. But the windows glowed with that warm, impossible amber light. The light of a home that was full of love. You painted straight lines, Tess whispered, tracing the roof. I learned from the best, Rin said. It has structure. Do you like it? I love it, Tess said, blinking back tears. It balances. We balance, Rin corrected. He kissed her. A quick, warm press of lips before the chaos of the night began. Now, Rin said, grabbing his tuxedo pants from the chair. Let's go light some fires. Metaphorical fires, Tess warned, grabbing her tablet. Mostly, Rin winked. They walked out into the snow, hand in hand, leaving the warm glow of the cabin behind them, ready to face the music, the cameras, and the beautiful, structured, chaotic life they had built together. The end.
Thank you for listening. Please visit me at winvalentine.com to stay up to date. Please subscribe, leave a comment, and review.